Today we're going to tackle a difficult topic. It's one that in some ways makes us think about what happens after this life, but really it should also make us think about what happens in this life. We're going to talk about the eternity of the soul and the many lives we live between lifetimes and within one. Let's all maybe get a cup of tea, take a deep breath. We're going to talk about this as we walk together down creation's paths. Hello everybody, my name is Charlie. I am a Christopagan druid and priest of Bridget. Today we're going to be talking about something really, really special. I can't wait to have this conversation. I am joined today by my wonderful husband.
Hello, I'm Brian. I'm a Christopagan druid, sous chef to the Dagda.
Today we're going to be talking about Palingenesis, which is a word you may not have heard before. And I use it for a very specific reason. You may have heard of reincarnation, transmigration of the soul, all of those things. This is an interesting topic, especially when going into Irish paganism, Christopaganism, and druidry in general. We are not going to take some hard and fast views on this, because I think anytime you speak definitively about the afterlife, you're probably trying to get something from somebody. We will know when we get there. Before we get into this topic, if you haven't already, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, whatever the terminology is, wherever you're listening to this podcast. We do original Christopagan Druid episodes on this podcast 5 days a week. You don't want to miss any of the topics that we do. There's a lot of meaty, juicy stuff to get into, and you don't want to miss a thing. So don't forget, click that like, subscribe, follow button so you don't miss a thing. Now let's get into it. This is an interesting topic. When I was working on A Dream of an Oak Church, I wrote a series of triads to get us thinking about these topics. The triad for this mystery, this root of druidry: 3 journeys of the Anew, the dances of the seasons, the walks of life, and the journeys to foreign lands. I worded it that way very specifically because when we look at the history of druidry, there are very few things we can say for certain about the ancient druids. One of them is they believed in reincarnation. All of our ancient sources, and quite a few of our medieval sources, show this firm belief in living multiple lifetimes. Now, I'm being very cagey with this because reincarnation is a very specific thing. Transmigration of the soul is a very specific thing. I tend to use the word palingenesis when I talk about this in druidry because all of our early Greek sources say that they taught the Pythagorean doctrine. You remember when you were in geometry class? The guy who figured out the things about the triangles? Well, he was a leader of a mystery school that believed that through mathematics and precision, you could find the meaning and purpose in life. They had a lot of interesting teachings, but one of them was that we are born again in successive generations, that our spirit returns time and time again. That is called palingenesis. That literally means to be born again. Okay? Okay. Now, you can see some immediate resonances with the Christian idea of one must be born again. The problem is, throw all those out of your mind. The actual Greek there says born from above, not born again. That's a theological reading that is added into the text. The actual text in the Gospels say that we have to be born from above. It could still be talking about something like this, but the wording is different. What does this mean for us? I really feel like our spirituality needs to be practical. It needs to be something that we are dealing with in a very personal, if it's not actually affecting our day-to-day lives, what point is it? There is no reason for us to spend time thinking about, worrying about things that aren't actually going to affect us. We can have wonderful debates about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin, but unless those angels dancing on the head of the pin are going to be powering a city, I don't know why I care. You know what I'm saying? It's pure philosophical. When I was a child, I had really bad recurring nightmares. I had 2 different ones. I'm not going to go into all the details about them, but I had 2 really, really bad recurring nightmares. They really bothered me. I had them for as long as I could remember. Some of my earliest memories are waking up from these nightmares. One day, a friend of mine took me to his rabbi. The rabbi sat me down on the couch, led me into kind of a meditative place. I started remembering these former lives, that I was actually remembering my moment of death in those former lives. That's why they were nightmares. They were traumas that I was carrying with me. The moment I had that realization, I stopped having those nightmares. I've never had them since. I'd had them at least once a week my entire life up until that point. Then they went away. Now, this rabbi explained to me the idea of soul gravity and how we move from life to life and all this according to the more mystical Jewish perspective. Honestly, I don't know what I think about this. I find it interesting. I know one of those dreams took place on a Japanese ship during World War II, and I think I've actually figured out which ship it was. I actually found an event that happened that really matches all of the things in my memory. I don't know. That's, I think, the most important thing when discussing this topic, that we have to come in with a heaping dose of humility. I don't know why I had those dreams. I feel like I know. It gives me peace to know. It made the nightmares go away.
I know I went through a similar journey with reoccurring nightmare as well. It was associated to the time of death. But when I came to peace with the conflict, the nightmares ended. It was more of this sense of peace.
Yeah.
On one level, no, it doesn't matter. On the other level, it does matter, because it did impact my life. I was able to grow from that experience. I was able to have a deeper understanding, a deeper connection, especially because part of that was learning to let go and also being deeper connected with the land. And coming to that point has helped me be better. I think that is one of the biggest struggles with palingenesis, where it is very personal and very individual. The minute somebody tries to ascribe this to large groups, I don't think it applies. I think only the generals applies to large groups, where a lot of people go through this, but it's so different.
Why even talk about it? It's important to talk about because I think whether we have a spirit that moves from life to life, which I do believe that we do, throughout our lives, we have multiple lifetimes. I find myself talking about this life in different, not even phases. Like, I was a different person. I was leading a different life in so many ways.
Above and beyond that, even biology jumps in and says, every 7 years, every cell in your body is replaced. You are entirely a new person every 7 years. Congratulations. You've been reincarnated. Like, there's some of that underpinning is truth.
This is where I think we can really learn from this. I don't think it's worth fretting over. I don't believe that we are carrying stains from previous lives and receiving punishment from previous lives. I think a lot of that is means of control when people talk about that. When we look at the way I worded this in the triad, the first part is the dances of the seasons. Now, this could be through the different parts of the year, quite literally, the different parts of the year, or through the different seasons of our lives. I know who I was as a child, as a teenager, as a young adult, as a newly married person, the person I was when we lived in Maryland, when we lived in California. These are very different phases where life was so different in each and every one of these. My childhood when we were living in Texas is very distinct from my childhood when we were living in Tennessee. I was surrounded by different friends. We were going to different churches. I was a different person in these two different places. Once I started looking at my life in that way, it helped me to come to terms with, the right word to use here is the nostalgia I was having about some of those time periods. I don't mean that in the way that nostalgia is used today. The word nostalgia originally came about as a diagnosis of a problem soldiers had on the front lines, where they got lost in this kind of melancholy of remembering what life was like before the war. All of the earliest uses of the word nostalgia really had this kind of melancholy aspect to it. And I find myself looking back at like my childhood, and there's this kind of wistful life that I used to have where I would climb trees and climb hills and be out in nature and running around. Because of my physical ailments, I can't do that anymore. It's not so much compartmentalizing that and being like, well, that's what I did when I was young and I'm not young anymore. It allows me to honor that as one of the lives that I had. It's a great blessing that when I was young, I could get to the top of any tree I decided I wanted to get to the top of. When I was young, I had all of these different lives where I got to experience living in Oklahoma City and in Tennessee, in Texas, in Texarkana, and the time we spent in Wisconsin. All of these different lives, these different lifetimes, these different places. It gives me context so that I'm not comparing them as strongly one to the other, because they are so distinct and different. They're not just phases. They're really were different lifetimes. That gets to the second part of the triad, the walks of life. Because I start thinking about my life when I was a Baptist, when we moved into a non-denominational evangelical church, which I often call the time I was in that cult, because it was very culty. My transition into the Catholic Church, my time there, all the different roles that I took on, and to this day take on, because it is being born again from place to place, depending on what I'm doing. When I'm at a sci-fi convention to talk about my books, that's a different kind of person I need to be in those places than if I am at a ritual and we're performing some kind of service. It's a different me that has to show up. There are aspects of me. It's not like I'm pretending to be somebody I'm not in these places, but different parts of me get to come up and be in those places. And that is as much a form of palingenesis or reincarnation as anything else. That person that you are at work, as opposed to the person you are with your friends, or maybe even the person you are with your best friend that you know you can say anything to.
It's the thing I really love about the imagery in this aspect, this root, where the earlier parts were tools. It's like the stuff you pack for your journey. You pack your tools, you pack your equipment, and so you have the earlier aspects, the earlier elements, the stuff we talked about in some of these earlier episodes are the tools that you take with you on the journey. Now you yourself are on the journey. It's recognizing that you're on the journey. Part of that is like we talked about earlier when we were talking about that relationship to yourself, to the people around you, and to the environment you're in. That is also part of that journey.
In a lot of ways, this is how you make that map. I'm going to go ahead to the third one, the journeys to foreign lands. This is the most powerful part of this idea for me, is when you realize, no, I want to be someone else. I want to be better in some way. I want to do something different.
Yeah. You first take stock. You look at where and what you were before, where you are now, and then you can visualize and see where you want to be, where you're journeying to.
The real gift of palingenesis, being able to be born again, knowing that that can happen within one lifetime as well as amongst many lifetimes, is at any point in your life, you can say, no, I'm starting fresh.
Yeah.
I'm starting again. I am going to reboot, where I'm going to try something different. I've done this many times in my life where I had made some really bad decisions. Not really going to go into that right now, but I had made some really bad decisions. I had gone into a very dark place. I was not in a good headspace. My life was really spiraling out of control. And having that freedom to go, nope, reset button. I'm starting again. I'm starting fresh. It was hard. I had to cut out a lot of people from my life that were my friends because they were pulling me back to that old life that I didn't want to be a part of. One of the major times we did this together, we realized we needed to reboot our lives. We literally moved across country. We moved from Maryland to California to get that fresh start, that new life.
It's working off that journey imagery,
Yeah.
where you go, okay, yes, I am currently in a dark place. You have to journey first from the dark place to the destination where you're going. So you have to start with that, removing those things, moving away from those things first, then moving towards the other things.
This goes to all the journeys that we take. This even includes like our meditational journeys, like what we're teaching in the guided meditations we do over at the Hollowstead. But all of those journeys allow us to become a different person, to take on a different life. When I was practicing Buddhism, it's one of the Buddhist practices I still go back to quite often. It's the practice of Togol, where you sit and you just start from the place of, I am the enlightened Buddha, the great Dharmakaya, and however that appears in your imagination, and the lightning bolt of illumination hits you. There you are. What is your bodhisattva form? Who are you as the bodhisattva sitting on your lotus throne? How are you radiating compassion and mercy and goodness out into the world? It's this jump ahead meditation technique where you imagine, well, what will you be as a Buddha when you are fully enlightened? You're doing this aspirationally. You're not tricking yourself into thinking, oh, I already am there. You're allowing yourself to inhabit this future state. You're jumping forward in your lives to that future state of, here I am as an enlightened being. How does that feel? How do I think? How do I interconnect with the world? How do I radiate peace and compassion and mercy into this world? That is a powerful experience.
The imagery of this is extremely helpful. In life, it is so important to recognize action-reaction. It is not good to operate from a place of reaction. It is so important to move from a place of action where you are choosing. In recognizing that you're on this journey, you are then choosing, I'm going to travel to this place, whether that is physically traveling. When you get up in the day and you're like, I'm going to go to the gym to work out, you're going to prepare yourself. First, you envision yourself working out at the gym, and then you go, okay, I need stretchy and comfortable enough clothing that's going to work for that journey. I need hydration, proper food and whatnot. Prepare all your tools, you do your journey. If you're going to be amongst company and you want to dress nice, you'll dress differently. You equip yourself differently for that. It's the same thing. You make that choice and you equip yourself appropriately. You see yourself there, and then you have that journey.
Like a lot of druids use the imagery of the life of Taliesin to help them understand their place in druidry. I think that's very valid in our beginning steps. Our relationship with Cerduin, our experience with the Awen, our transformation from Gwion into Taliesin, and that kind of transformation, that spiritual awakening. Maybe we should do another spiritual awakening episode on the story of Taliesin at some point. Once you have connected, once you've had that awakening, for me, that experience is more akin to the story of Bran, where there we are and someone, this mystical figure, has come through with that silver branch from the land where there is no sorrows, where all is peace and justice. And that quest gets born in your heart, and you rally up your forces and you get on the boat and you head out and you set sail to find that blessed land. There's a great ecumenical question as to whether or not Bran actually found it. I think he did, but that's a whole question, because I think the Isle of Women and the Isle that he was looking for are the same.
That's what I love about that too. Sometimes you wander off the path, and recognizing that can happen. That is a part of life. That is a part of living, and that's okay too. And if it's not where you wanted to be, you can still correct. You can go back, or you can just accept where you're at and continue the journey forward and see where you end up, because maybe that was actually the path you should have been on all along.
So as we're looking at these voyages that we can take, these voyages to foreign lands, the future is always a foreign land. I don't know where that quote comes from, but I'm thinking of a song by a particular band that I tend to love. But I know I've heard that phrase somewhere else. I just can't place it. I haven't taken the energy to look and see where it comes from. But it really is. All of the places we go in our meditations, in our lives, when we go out to meet new people, when we go on grand new adventures, because I don't believe you're ever too old for a grand new adventure. I have met people in their 70s, in their 80s, that are taking on these grand new adventures. People in their 60s. I'm approaching my 50s.
When I was young, I was fortunate enough to know these two old ladies. They were sisters. One was 105 and one was 106. And this was 20 years ago, and they were very excited about learning how to do computer programming. That was their next grand adventure. At 105 and 106, you're never too old to go on a grand new adventure. They would come in and tell me their tales of their experiences as they traveled along their journey.
Those adventures are going to be appropriate to your means. I would love to say I'm going to go out and do massive exploring, but I know the limitations I have, my mobility limitations. And yeah, there is some sorrow there. I keep wanting to go back to that because I think people hear what I'm saying and they're like, Charlie, that's unrealistic. You don't understand the limitations that I have on me. Well, I'm kind of open about the limitations that I have on me, but I'm not completely open about the limitations I have on me. I have a lot of mobility issues, but we still go on adventures. We did a grand adventure just last year up to Chicago, where friends from all over the country decided to rent a house together. It was closest to everybody because of friends from Canada and whatnot. And so we all came together in Chicago and had this grand week adventure.
There was that amazing point during that adventure when, what was it, 20 some rainbows?
Oh yeah, on the way there.
Yeah, on the way there.
Yeah, we counted 20 rainbows on the way there.
Yeah, because we were a little worried about all the storms that were raging through it while we were trying to travel, but we got lucky enough that we had a little bit of rain, but we mostly got to enjoy 20 some rainbows.
And it was magical. The weather was beautiful and it was gorgeous, and we had this wonderful, wonderful time. It's like this little secret life that I lived for a week, because there we all were in this house together. We're people that have talked, and we still meet every week online and talk, but then we were living together. We were cooking meals together. We were going shopping together, and we were living together in this communal house for a week just to get to know each other better and just to hang out in person. It's this magical little adventure that almost feels like a lifetime in and of itself to me.
A lot of that can be an adventure. There are times where just going to the store to go shopping is so considered a mundane task. Sometimes I will intentionally go on a grand adventure while going shopping, give myself maybe a little extra 30 minutes or an extra hour, and I will intentionally pick different roads to drive down, go a different path. It then becomes this whole grand adventure.
Or a little quest.
I'm on a quest. I've got to go get the talisman, the magical.
What new thing in the food aisle, in
Yeah.
the ethnic food aisle, have I never heard of before? What vegetable or fruit have they stocked that I've never seen before?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, and then I bring that back, and that becomes the treasure, so to speak, from that grand adventure. I face obstacles and stuff on the driving there or in the store. Instead of those just becoming annoyances, I just recontextualize as part of the journey, where they were the great beasts I had to defeat, quote unquote, to achieve the treasure and win the day. I went shopping, but it was a grand adventure.
I know you may be thinking at this point, I thought you were going to be talking about reincarnation. And we have this whole time. This new birth, this new life, whether it's the ones that haunted our dreams, where I really do feel connected to those former lives in this one. And it's changed my politics, to be quite honest, in a lot of ways. Or these little reincarnations, little new births that we have throughout our life. This is an idea that really can empower us to live a powerful life now. And like I always say, if your spirituality is not doing that for you, you need to fix your spirituality. Because the point of living in the spirit is living here, now. Tomorrow will take care of itself. I hope this has helped you, inspired you, given you some insights. If it has, let me know. What are your thoughts about this? We don't have to have a grand theological debate, but what do you think? How many lives have you lived since you were born this time? Let me know. If you're listening to us on YouTube or Spotify, leave a comment right there. Let us know. If you're listening to us anywhere else, leave a comment right there, but they don't let us know that it's there. So after you do, copy it and go over to creationspaths.com, click chat and paste it there. Let us know so that we can interact with you and build community together. Because I think it'd be interesting, not just do you remember any lives before this one, which if you do and you want to share, that's beautiful. But we've all had many lives just in this one since we were born this time. It'd be wonderful to know. While you're over at creationspaths.com, if you have a few dollars you can pass our way, you can sign up for a membership there. We're going to be offering classes soon. And people who have signed up over there will be able to get those classes early. And then they'll roll out to everybody else afterwards. If you would like to support us somewhere else, you can check us out on Ko-fi or Patreon. I am C. Dorset on both. That goes to support everything I do, from my art, my music, my writing, everything. That just helps us to keep the lights on and keep food on our table, and thank you to everybody who helps us with that. Until next time, just remember that we are all connected in the one life. That one life lives in us and in all other things. That interconnection is something that can never be taken from us. It is something that we should draw great meaning and hope from. Amen.
Amen.